Right, I want to welcome you to the program. Of course, a very, very good afternoon to you, and of course, from wherever part of the world you're watching us, I need you to understand that we are now in session. It is the summit or colloque where we get to scale the heights just to be able to have conversations that matter to you. And I, of course, from Rwanda, but of course, scaling them to look at also their perspective from the global perspective. Of course, as always, my name is Eugene. And thank you so much for making time. This particular program is not just my show or a show that is just right here on Rwanda Television. It is your program. It is your platform. And we want to welcome your views, your thoughts. And you know the drill by now. All you need to do is get in touch with us across our social media platforms, including the X platform. And you can be able to get conversational right there. All you need to do is add the hashtag #TheSummitRW if you have any feedback or comment that you're sharing with us. It helps us to be able to track your feedback, of course, right here on this particular program. So we are now live. As you can see, we are on the YouTube platform. Of course, you can be able to go onto the chat section and be able to share with us your comments throughout the course of this particular program. But I want to read some of the comments that have been coming through, especially concerning this particular topic that we have tonight. We've been sharing, the topic in advance. We'll be talking about the issue of spurring private education financing, because we know that a lot of people out here are actually seeking education, especially higher learning education, but a lot of them have had to shelve those particular dreams just because they have not been able to get adequate financing. Some have even had to sell their only remaining cow or their only chicken to be able to school either their children, school themselves, or actually I'm speaking about the firstborns. You know what I'm talking about. You've been able to sacrifice your all to be able to take your siblings to school. And we want to talk a bit about that aspect of what is needed to be able to remodel or actually look at the current model of student financing or education financing. What do we do to ensure there are more players, especially within the private school or education financing space? Because we know that the government has done that. There's a lot of subsidies, students' loans, but that is not enough, because we know that around 10% of tertiary education is actually financed by government stakeholders through the schemes that I've just spoken about. But what about the other 90%? What will be needed to be done? And I know that a lot of you are waiting eagerly for this particular conversation. I have Sengimana Jean de la Paix, who's actually said it is extremely interesting. And of course, I also have Amos Seromba, who says this is a good one, Nanangwe. I will be in, and I'm hoping that you're already checked in and ready for this particular conversation. Magnifique Mikisha says, looking forward to this great conversation on the summit. And like I said, you can get conversational, start talking to us, tell us what your thoughts are, your ideas. It could be the game-changing idea on what needs to be done on this particular space. And we know that there are players who are already doing something about this. We're talking about Chancellor International that is actually already offering this particular support in terms of student financing. But we want to know the model and what can be done from a policy perspective to encourage more of them to be able to do this here in Rwanda, but of course across the region. I want to welcome our panelists here in studio. Like I mentioned, we have Batia Blancas, who's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Chancellor International. Thank you for making time and joining us on the program. We also have Natalie Munyamenda, who's actually the CEO of Kepler. Thank you for making time, Natalie. And also we have Amin Miramago, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Thank you for making time as well for joining us on the program. I want us to start off with Natalie, because we are talking about education financing and being within a space that a lot of students are coming in, or those who are with those ambitions and aspirations of coming in. I need you to paint a picture for us. What is it like? What are the challenges, especially for students who have been having these ambitions of getting an education, but not being able to get it because of that particular challenge? What do you hear when they knock to your door? And just take us through this kind of situation to be able to understand the need and where we can be able to now come in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, in Rwanda we have 9%, less than 10% who go into higher education, and the primary reason is because of the cost of education in higher education. I think the government has worked very hard to make primary and secondary school accessible to all young Rwandans, but I think at the higher education, not just university, but even TVETs, if you are not going through the loan system, the government loan system that is managed now by BRD, you do not have access unless you have someone paying for you. Yeah. or you have a private financing which Chanson provides for our students. So I think the biggest challenge, of course, is access, and access is really it comes down to, do you have the money to be able to pay the education? Yeah. And private institutions like ours, Kepler College and other private institutions, have to survive. You have to have infrastructure, you have to have the right quality teachers, you have to be able to follow up. That means career advising to make them ready for employment, and all of that costs money. Yeah. And so we are unable to provide scholarships for all the students that come through Kepler, and that's a big challenge. And you know, education should be a non-profit business where you get in by merit, but the reality is somebody needs to pay. And so I think the need for private financing, whether it's by impactive funds, all the people who have this, who have the means, whether it's by associations, so industry associations, somebody has to chip in to make sure that this happens, and I think that's what we're here to discuss.
Correct. And I mean, you know, we're not just talking about students who are, you know, getting off primary school, going to secondary and then university. We're even talking about those who are seeking, you know, professional upskilling, and that's where you come in on this particular scenario. What's the situation like? We know of people who have shelved their ambitions of becoming the people who can be able to support the government through accountability, but they said, everybody has tried, but I think I can't do this. What's the situation like from the profession?
Yeah, from a professional point of view, I think the situation is also very frustrating. A lot of people have had to let go of their dreams, and when you look at the demand just within the sector, it's mind-boggling. I would say, like, when you look at the public sector, there's a study that was done some time back, I think was something called the PFM-L&D. They had articulated that they needed around 8,440,000 certified accounting technicians and certified public accountants to be able to man the government finances. And currently, when you see what we have, even when you look at our regions, only have just 1,000, and that's just the public sector. Now, when we go to the private sector, it's even worse, because the nearest source you could go to would be like the tax register. When you look at the tax register, you have over 270,000 businesses that are paying taxes. So these people, they need to be supported into that. I was even told, actually, that's not even enough, that when you look at Irembo, that government service where you can go there and do different things, request different services from government, they are even also paying taxes through Irembo. So it means actually it's also almost everyone. So now the key question is, where are these people who are going to support all these people who need these services, where are they going to come from if we have not really supported? We know that the government has been they've been having a scheme to train public servants. I know now they have also moved another step further. They're now supporting accounting students who are high performing within the various universities. It's also a very, very good move, but it's only a drop in the sand. So we need to create the numbers. So if I say that my pass rate is maybe 50%, and I need, and you see the numbers we are talking about, even 10,000 is no longer, because we're always dealing with a moving target. So even if we just take 10,000, so it means for me actually to be able to guarantee that I can bring in 10,000 people at a pass rate of 50%, at least I need to have around 20,000 people who are already enrolled on this program. And we are nowhere near that. So there's a lot to be done.
There's a lot to be done. We'll talk a bit about that. And I want to hear from you, but especially coming into this particular field, it must be a lonely space, first of all, because there aren't many private education financiers offering this. So I want to understand, first of all, we've had the need and the demand for this. So already we know why you're in. But talk to us a bit about the model. How is it like, and what is it that you might need to be able to support more dreams that could often or regularly be shut down because someone was not able to access this student funding?
So I'm going to take us back to 2017, 2018, when I came to Rwanda the first time to understand what the actual situation is for young people and how they are accessing higher education that leads to employment outcomes. And what I met was Kepler, who has a vast number of applicants who cannot actually enroll in the program because there's a limited number of financing. There's this massive upskilling gap. And what we identified is that if you have a really strong education provider that is providing education with real outcomes like employment, then it's actually an investment opportunity, right? Because you have a young person who's going to go to school and you know they are going to either increase their income or gain their first job, which was a clear indication to us that this young person is investable. Right? When we looked at what was available from a financing perspective for young people at that time, there was the BRD loan that cannot meet the full demand. The private financing sector, so banks and microfinance institutions, were not really spending time developing products for this market because they are deemed too risky, right? They can't provide collateral, etc. So I think what we saw was an opportunity to, in a very focused manner, design a product that would serve young people. And that requires a very student-centric customer service approach. So the way our model works is we'll partner with folks like ICBAR and Kepler and finance the education, and then the young person will have a contract with us to make a repayment once they are earning above 80,000 Rwandan francs. So they have to secure their livelihoods first, and then they start repayments. And the repayment is like a set percentage of their net income, which means the repayments adjust to what they earn, and then it's capped to the top for the high earners. And we're actually starting to see that this works. So we're starting to show the market that if you invest in a young person with the right education program, they make repayments. We have 935 people who are already making repayments, and we have a very low default rate. It's similar to a bank. So we are starting to, I think, show in Rwanda that you can provide private student financing. It is a little bit lonely, but we are, we've created a strong network. We see ourselves as an ecosystem player.
That way, right?
Exactly. No, we don't. We want to crowd in more players. Even Chanson can't meet the full demand. I mean, the numbers that we're talking about, we're talking 50, 60,000 people a year, right? There's no way one company can meet that. So what we need to do is create policy to support existing financial institutions or other innovators to come into the space and also start investing in young people.
Right. Natalie, I'll ask you this, because part of the reason why maybe there aren't many players, especially private student or education financiers in place, they might be saying, it's a very risky affair. But yet we're hearing from Chanson that it's a proven concept, that it's working. It is not risky at all. Maybe they'll say the policy framework is not really friendly. We don't really feel like there's enough either protection or commitment from the policymakers on this. Where do you see the missing link? What is it that needs to be done to be able to spur more or entice more private players to come in to support within education financing? Actually,
I wouldn't say that the regulatory environment is not conducive. I would say that our regulator, in this case, which would be the National Bank, right, has a, I would say, it's sandbox approach. If they see that it's a possibility, they come in to provide assistance in this area. So I think we hope to see in the future the possibility, very near future, some sort of regulation or policy around this that allows private sector funds to be able to, or even bonds. I was suggesting the other day that some sort of education bond, whether it's managed by BRD, whether it's managed by other organizations like Chanson, that students can go directly to private students can go directly to BRD. I think what is interesting with the Chanson approach is that it's group risk. And young people do not have a guarantee. They don't have land to put away so that the bank can give them a loan. So we have to really think about new approaches to be able to get young people educated. And I think I always discuss with private sector companies, you want me to, as an educator, as an education institution, you want us to push out some of the best ready-to-work students, but the quality of this costs a lot of money. I think if you have scale, you can push out 20,000, but I think 20,000, to be able to get 20,000 who are ready to work is a challenge. And I think we need new ways, new approaches, new funding to be able to do this. One thing I can say is, as someone who raised a lot of funding in the philanthropic space, higher education is no longer attracting funding from philanthropists. They're not interested in that. And so we have to find sustainable ways for us to continue to provide quality education that leads to employment outcomes, which is what Bati was talking about. They only fund education institutions that have demonstrated that their students are hired and can work. But from a regulatory perspective, I think what we need is, because really what makes this type of financing works is the repayment. So students have to be able to repay. And so to be able to repay, there must be some sort of policies and legislation around this, so that, we know with BRD as an employer, I don't go back and forth with them. I just send them the money for all the people who took the loan, right? And so we need that kind of legislation and policies, so that for private institutions that are regulated, Chancellor is regulated, the fund is regulated by the National Bank. Those who are regulated under the National Bank can also access this type of clear guidelines to employers.
But then if we're going to look at it from a perspective of the significance of education, first of all, to even the ambitions that the country has, the continent has, then we narrow down to the demographic of the young people, the population. I want to understand from you, Amin, do you think we're doing this demographic justice? Are we really walking the talk as nations, especially if our organs, our sectors are to fully walk the talk in terms of supporting? What would you be expecting to see from financial institutions, for example? What would you be expecting to see from private sector organizations towards ensuring that no dream is killed because someone was not able to fund?
I was looking at the figures that the BRD was putting out there. One of the key nightmares they have is that they're not able to collect. Collection is a big problem for them. And even for them, they have a specific legislation that empowers them to be able to do so. So now you look at that you look at now a private provider. Are they empowered enough to be able to make sure that whatever they've invested, they can be able to recoup it back? There's still a very big gap there. When you look at when you look at private organizations, for example, very difficult to track. For public sector, probably you could use the Office of the Auditor General when they're doing their annual audits. Probably they could also that's an area they could look at and request institutions to comply. But for the private sector, it's still going to be a gray area. Yeah. So coming back to the question of whether we are doing enough, I would say that we are not even near doing enough. Because, of course, we know there are a lot of institutions which are not, they cannot be able to train, but at least they have the funds, and they can avail these funds to people who want to put it to a very good cause. And I think that's where we can do much more. I was just talking to one of the local investors, and this local investor was really very happy that they are paying an expatriate to be able to do their work, and they were telling me that the way the expatriates are doing a very wonderful job, so they don't have to worry, and they're just focused on the strategies, how they can increase their market share and all that. And then I said, okay, so but this expatriate is taking all this money to their home country, so where is Rwanda benefiting from? Then I said, okay, fine. What if we had also more local people, so doing some of these jobs for you? Because when I was looking at the amount of money I was paying this person, when I look at a national scale, the same pay he was giving this person would pay almost 3 people locally. So now all these 3 people are just out of the whole picture. And then I said, no, maybe there's something that we miss. And clearly, Eugene, when you look at the issue of money, for me personally, I've never believed that money is an issue. There's always, you see, if you don't put money in education, probably you're putting it into something else. But money will always be there doing different things. But what this money is doing, is it really what we want it to do? Is it really going to lead to the kind of development outcome that we're looking for as a country? I think that's self-introspection that we need to do as a country, and be able to make sure that we put in place policies, we have wider players. And then the other thing of, I saw Natalie made a very nice point around, you see, currently right now, it's like a lottery. You do your national exam and you have to pray that HEC can be able to pick you up, and then they can give you they can give you that. But it shouldn't be like that. The funds should be available, and then I could be able to choose which courses I want to go, because already even when you look at the market data, There are some professions, if I take an example from my own profession, a CPA graduate currently right now is earning at least a minimum. The entry money that they get when they get into their first job is around $1 million francs. And I don't think that's little money. That's money that's, so it means that these are people that you can bet on and invest on them, and you really know that they can be able to return back the money.
I understand that there's something a little bit whispered to me that there's something you're doing together, Chanson International and ICPAR. But the question I want to ask is tied towards or along the lines of what Amin is saying, the challenge of collection. And it's tied to what probably private institutions or financial institutions would say. What's the guarantee that these people will be employed? And it takes us back to the quality of education debate, because sometimes people have argued that our institutions or higher learning are not actually preparing our students for the job market. And so it becomes a challenge to have that guarantee that they will actually be employed. How are you dealing with this challenge?
Wow. That's a big question. So, I mean, what you need to understand is this is an ecosystem, right? You have the education providers, you have the employers, you have young people. And the question is, how do you bring everyone together and make sure that everyone's incentivized to do their best? And it's a multifaceted approach, but I think it's highlighting and supporting education institutions that are doing that, so that we create lighthouse examples. And we've started to see a change. You know, we have education institutions that come to us, and we do a due diligence. We establish their graduates aren't getting hired. They come to us 2 years later. We do another data collection, and they've now improved because we've told them where to improve. So what is critical for the space, and we were actually just talking about that, is getting the data to education institutions so they know where to focus. Right, and this is where sort of in the public sector space we need to support, and the private sectors, they need to support education institutions to understand what skills do we need, how many jobs are we going to have in this space, so education institutions can support that. So that's the one side of it. And then, so if you can get those parties to work together, then you've started your de-risking process. The other thing, the main reason young people default on government student loans is because the research that we've done, we've seen is that they don't really understand what they have signed up for, right? So the education, the financial literacy that goes with financing a young person is critical. And the second is the relationship with the financing provider. And this is why I was saying student-centric design. It's really important to design products that understand how young people think, what they need. You meet them where they're at, and then it's much easier just to engage with them. And then finally, you need policy, as we've already shared.
Right. I'll come to you, Natalie, just to pick up on the same. But before you release the mic, make us understand this aspect where you said most do not know what they're signing up to. But then also talk to us a bit about the Chanson International experience. How does it look like? Because you say you are not going to pay or ask to be paid to pay or repay if you do not get the job. How does this work?
So, I mean, think back to when you were young, right? I mean, being 19 and you've never taken a loan, you don't understand how banks really work. I mean, we've all been in that position. That's where young people are when they come to us. So what we do is we go through a workshop, we explain everything to them, and we bring their guardians or their parents into the process. So you have the elders around them helping them to make this decision and ensuring they really understand what this responsibility is with signing the contract. In terms of the repayments starting when someone gets employment, so we've built a relationship with the young person whilst they studied. We've given them financial literacy skills, and then there is a contractual obligation that they have. I mean, we're a regulated financial institution. They have signed a contract, and they have to report to us on their earnings. We also have other ways to verify whether they are employed. And we have this monthly we have a field team, right? They touch base with people once a month to see where they are and where they're struggling to get employment. I think this is critical because if we ask people to repay before they're employed, then we're just going to continue the cycle of poverty, blankly put, and we'll get into a situation where you have young people who have debt that they can't repay, and that is not ethical.
Right. I like that. Natalie, is it a guilty as charged scenario when we talk about those who feel that young people who are looking for student or education financing are a risky lot because higher learning institutions have not done enough to make them very competitive for us to feel we are comfortable. All the graduates getting out this year are going to get employed and they'll be earning the 1 million plus that are being talked about. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
Is it a guilty as charged question for
There
higher
are
learning institutions?
two areas here. The first is that education institutions have to and are improving. We work with partners like Rwanda Polytechnic on this. The need to improve career services, to get trends and understand the different skills that are required in the places that we are actually working is really important. And I would say soft skills and digital skills and life skills are really important. And packaging that is actually adds to the costs for education institutions. So we have to figure out our business models on how we continue the quality. We add all these 21st century skills and to make our students when they graduate competitive. So that's the responsibility of the education provider. There is a challenge that we face because young people come in. A lot of young people actually at Kepler feel like Chanson is a scam, which because there is a sense that they don't understand that education is not free, ever free. So even for primary and secondary school, someone's paying for it, it's the government.
Yeah.
So education is never free. But what we need to, and then the challenge is that parents often do not provide any financial literacy to young people young, so they do not know what things cost. And so they feel robbed, whether it's at the BRD level or whether it's at Kepler. When you say take a loan, they feel that you're robbing me, but you should offer me for this for free.
For free, yeah.
And if we offer education for free, we will eventually have no quality and it will collapse. So I think the reality is education costs something. So either a philanthropist is paying for it or the government is paying for it, or you have to look for private financiers. In other countries, in areas where there's a high need for certain types of skills, the industry bodies, the industry associations pull together funding and say, hey, we want to, which we were discussing earlier, we need 10,000 people a year. What are the institutions that have been really good at providing these quality graduates?
Yeah.
And then they will fund those institutions. And so we have to, the private sector has to become much more aware that where we're going, if you need 5,000 graduates a year, you need to invest in the institutions that have produced these. But there's also a challenge, I think, that parents, I'm a parent, and I'm already starting to teach at my child's school, they're already teaching them about money. And it's really important for young people to come to already higher education with an understanding that loans are not bad. It's how you manage them, how do we save money. Financial literacy is really critical on this. It would solve a lot of the challenges that Chanson and ourselves face. But yeah, I think education institutions, we are under a lot of pressure to produce. Yeah. And the quality and scale is very expensive. University of Rwanda, for example, has 20,000, 19,000 students. We have 1,000 students, 1,400 students very soon. That comparison is very difficult. So it's okay to, 1,400 students, you can track where they're working, you can make sure that they're getting jobs. Once you hit 10,000, 20,000, you need a very open and clear strategy on how you're going to get them jobs. So the private sector, education institutions, policymakers, we need to work together. But I would say that there's a role for parents to explain these things, not when they're 19. I mean, if you're learning about loans and student loans and the cost of education at 19, there is a problem, because then everybody looks like they're trying to rip you off.
And that becomes a challenge even now when they need to actually pay for what they need to pay for. I mean, I'll come back to you again on this aspect. The young person seems to be a cornered person, I think, looking at things from the perspective of being thought as a very risky affair. And it's cross-cutting, not just in education, a lot of things, even youth-led projects.
And by the way, young people are not the riskiest. People who default on loans are all ages. We have to be careful that we say that it's not,
Yes.
Automatically a young person is risky.
Yes.
I think the reasons that they're risky is because they cannot usually access the regular financial products, because they don't have guarantees, they don't have collateral.
And that's the point. And I was leading to that in terms of the perception. There's and it's unfair. And that's what I was saying, the young person is a very disadvantaged corner in that sense. But now, if we were to talk solutions in terms of what then do we do to, first of all, deal with the misconceptions and even the de-risking aspect. I know Natalie has mentioned financial literacy, and also Bati has spoken about that. How do we ensure that as we leave this room, we probably spark that conversation? What are those two things that you think we need to immediately start working on?
I'll talk on two things. There's something that Natalia touched on. I wanted to give a typical scenario that happens in a Rwandan homestead, if I can say that. Most parents are not even aware about what jobs are going to be there in the future. So they're making an investment, but they're not even sure
if they'll get anything or not.
Yeah, so the child probably, they don't have any career guidance. They look at the neighbors, what are they doing? And they say, okay, fine, I think it looks fancy. Maybe I should just doing that. Then 3 years, 4 years down the line, probably the parent has sold a plot of land, they've sold some livestock and all that, just to push these people to realize their dreams. At the end of the Natalia, I'm sure she'll be very happy to give the degree once they have been able to finish off and say, guys, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being with you. We'll wish you all the best wherever life is going to take you. Now, problems start. The parent, when they were sponsoring this student, they were optimistic that after a certain duration, this person will become independent. And then now this person comes and said, no, I still need transport money. I still need money to go to the notary and notify my documents because I need to drop them at point X so that I can see whether I can get it. Then I tell them, no. Actually, the kind of degree that you studied was not the right degree. We think you should have done a professional qualification. I say, what is this thing? It was CPA. Now, the parents now starts now looking at another cost of paying another CPA, and is not, and remember, this parent is not even traumatized. They're not even sure that even that one also will provide the much needed employment. So there's a lot of career guidance that is required, both for the children and also for the parents to be sensitized, to be able to know that the hard-earned cash that they have has to be invested in a very wise way, so that at least they don't end up, having to reinvest again. That is one of the things. Then the other thing that you've mentioned about looking at young people as a potential risk, I would say that the people who do that or who come up with that narrative, they are people who are looking at things from a short-term perspective. And I'll give you an example. The current banker, my current banker, is the bank that I studied with when I was a student. So there's always that automatic loyalty that comes. So this is the person I was banking with when I was still at campus. So even when I go into employment, the same person that I want to continue. And then when people, so people have to start looking at these things as, I don't know whether, I would say that a lot of us are not investors, really. What a real investor would do, he will look at things and say, okay, if I turn this thing around, if I brush this thing off like this, what would it look like in 10 years or 20 years from now? So when you look at this young person, don't look at them now. Look at them in 10 years, in 20 years, and say, okay, what will these people be? So if I make this 1 or 2 moves, what will be the exponential growth into this person's income or whatever, and what can we be able to do? So we've talked several times about a demographic dividend. So what brings us to say that this is a demographic dividend? It's because precisely we believe that once you've made the right investment in these people, they're going to expand exponentially in all aspects, be it knowledge-wise, be it financially, be it in all the other fields that they would want to excel at.
Right. And I want to come back to you, but especially on the common misconceptions and misperceptions, especially on student financing. If myself, I usually receive several emails that have been awarded a specific portion of sponsorship for a course, that there's this higher learning institution that continues looking for me. They even call and they don't do it. But I've never really called back because of that perception that this is a scam. This is not legitimate. I'm sure you face that at some point or at some level, and yet you're here to support. You're here to actually fix a solution and fix a problem that we all need a solution to. What is it that you want the nation tonight to understand that they've not understood properly about the concept of student financing? We know we've talked about the aspect of this is not a token. It's actually you have to repay it. That's one of the things they need to know. But what else?
I think what is critical is for the young people that do have the opportunity to access education and get financing, that what they do impacts the next generation, right? And we are starting to prove to the world that you can invest in young people. We started with a 500,000 USD investment. Now we've raised 14 million, and this is investment from outside and within Rwanda. And we're now targeting 40 million because we have a strong track record of graduates who are showing we can make repayments. So that responsibility for those who have had access is really, really, really important. I think the other key thing is that Chanson is regulated by the central bank. We are here to build the ecosystem, and we cannot be the only provider. We won't solve the problem. And if you ever have a doubt about whether what you are being offered is a scam or not, contact the central bank or contact Miniduke. Real providers will be registered with either one of those.
Right. That's awful. Natalie, especially on the solutions aspect.
Yeah, I think so. We're headed in the direction where the future of work will be changing, right? It will not be only traditional roles, only traditional degrees, right? And so I think parents specifically need to keep an open mind that if your child says, hey, I want to do graphic design, they could make more money than you make in whatever job you're doing.
Correct.
So first, keeping an open mind and working with your child to say, hey, if they want to do graphic design, what skills do they need to go? Where do they need to study, right? And I think from the perspective of policy, as a country, we have to become take on that sandbox approach to say what are the jobs coming, and it might not look like a traditional 3 or 4 year degree. It might be a 12-month, a 6-month course that really allows them to do well for themselves. We're going to see a lot more gig work. We're going to see different types of work. So from the policy and both parents, we have to be much more flexible, and I think the financing also has to follow that. But for it to work, employers have to accept whatever certification it is, because it will not look like traditional certification. So I think that keeping that open mind, keeping a sandbox approach to the policy side of things, and for financing and industries to be, we talked about this, to become more flexible, to pull in money to attract the type of talent that they need. We all have to be problem solvers. The private sector cannot continue to complain, oh, the students coming out of these universities are not great, but you're doing nothing about it. I think we can work together to make sure that we are producing the type of talent that works in Rwanda, in the region, internationally. And then from the perspective of private financing, the need is so great that I think that we have to work, both education institutions, private sector bodies, we have to work to attract this funding. I always say this, the demographic dividend can become a very high risk. The biggest risk is actually youth unemployment. For any country. It's the highest risk that we have as countries on the continent. And so making sure that we are producing people who are getting jobs is a priority for it. It keeps me up at night. It should keep us all up at night. You know, what types of jobs, what types of pathways are we offering young people? And as I think you said it, when we do the right things, the money comes. I think our president likes to say that. There's so much money in the world. I think that we have to really view this as a priority. And as you said, you invest in young people. This is our future. When we are old and we need somebody to put money in our pension funds, these are the young people who will be working. Yeah. So we have to, that's how we renew our society. And this is our tax base, our future tax base. So we really need to think through how we get more and more young people, not just through university and TVET, but through all sorts of pathways that will allow them to be productive citizens in our society.
Yeah, we need to think about that strategically. But I mean, what is keeping us from walking the talk? What is keeping us from not doing it? I just need to understand from the perspective you're seated on. And is it, I had an idea being thrown of even a levy for skilling, you know, is this something that we could be looking at, and what would be needed to effect it?
I think basically we're waiting for trailblazers like Chanson to come around, to take away that fear and showing that, guys, look, some of these things, can happen. They can. So there's that much anticipated training levy. We are all looking towards that. But there are also other things we could even be doing, like in our industry. We normally even do fundraisers, and we will always be happy to do that. But now the issue now becomes, do we have even fund managers who will be able to do a good job to those resources? Is, for example, Chanson willing to accept my money and be able to guarantee me that they'll give me the accountant that I need? Then I'll be willing to jump into that space.
What's the trend like? And probably even answering to that question, maybe it's a direct question, maybe they have it. What are the trends? What do you look, from the time you got into the space, what are you seeing in terms of the trends for the fear that was there and to the uptake? We know that there's a huge demand, yes, but what is the trend? Is there anything moving? And then also, while you're still at it, policy plays a key role. And if there's any policy that or framework you'd love to see happen to be able to make you even do more, what would that be? If there's a wish list someone is writing somewhere for you tonight.
So I think there are a couple of trends that we've seen since we've started. I think there's definitely the education space is shifting, as Natalie said, right? We need to rethink. You don't need to do a bachelor's degree and a master's degree to then do this, right? It's how do we get people into skills? How do we upskill people who may have studied something, but actually we need more CPAs. So how do we get more people to do CPAs? Just different pathways into employment. And the Ministry of Education is doing a fantastic job in that. I mean, the TVET and the higher education structure is world class. It's always looking at how do you bring people back into education that leads to employment. So there's definitely that. I think the other trend that we're starting to see is the rest of the world is waking up to the fact that the future workforce of the globe is on this continent. And it's such a fantastic opportunity. And I love spending time outside of Rwanda raising money and awareness around this. And there's an increased request for skills, either whether it's working remotely from Rwanda or, actually moving out. And I think that is a very, very, very big opportunity for us as a country and as a continent. Right. And then, I mean, we're in a difficult space. We're not, as Natalie said, education is not the trendy investment thing to do. It's climate, it's etc., which all has its place. But I think what is interesting is innovative finance, sustainable finance, approaching these kind of problems in a more innovative way. That is still interesting to people. So education bonds, getting the private sector involved, etc. So when we meet with development partners or the private sector here, in fact, I had a student recently, a graduate, who's finished repayments, and she said to me, when can I start investing in ISAs? And I was like, great. That is, when you can start investing in this product, then we are creating a real market.
Right. That's
bond.
Yeah.
It's the bond. Natalie's going to get a bond.
What do you want from...
I'm an employer myself, and I invest in the type of talent I'm looking for. One of the first things I do is we hire from our own university and from our own graduates, and we work very hard to upskill them, because I think the notion that you will not need to upskill anyone in your industry is false. So I think this attitude of a learning environment, partnering with the right institutions that can provide those young people, having your own quick and great way to upskill and onboard staff. But I would say that the private sector should not think that they can attract the type of talent, because in the future it will be very competitive. If you want to attract good talent, you have to be a great place to work, first of all, but also you have to invest somehow. And if you are not in the business of education, invest in education institutions that are doing it. I think That's the main message. You know, the future of work is going to be changing and is already changing. So I think it's good for the private sector, the different policymakers and education institutions and private finance organizations to really, and public and private financing, to really think through how we can work together on this. Because really the key thing, as he was saying, is that this young person is the thing that we're all meeting around. Right, and they also should be a player in this. But I think if we are really focused on improving the lives of young Rwandans, we have to think carefully, and we have to view them as the prize. They are the prize,
right?
Because they're the prize for all of us. They are the talents that you're going to hire. They're the tax base for the for Rwanda revenue. They are going to put money into us, our pensions in the future, right? They are the people who represent us in all the different industries, whether in Rwanda and globally. Yeah. So investing in a young person is a must, and I think, you know, keeping this young person in our minds when we make these decisions is important. It's
very important. I want to go read some feedback, some comments, but before I do that, Amin, what's your commitment? What are you committing? I know you have a partnership with Chansen International. What's your commitment as an employer as well towards this particular conversation? We've said charity begins at home, so it starts here. Chansen has opened the doors. What's your commitment in that area?
Yeah, for us as a profession, really, we want to be a future-ready profession. Actually, even among our pillars in our current strategy, 2020-2026, actually there's already that slot, creating a future-ready profession. Yeah. Giving people the right skills that they need to be able to thrive into the future. Yeah. Because, Anangwe, to be honest, the future is very scary. The future is scary in which sense? If you're not going to be top-notch in terms of skills and know what to do, nobody's going to give you a job. Yeah. That one you can take it to the bank. Yeah. Even institutions, did you know that in the future, the economic unit is going to be the home? So like when you're going to build a house, you're thinking about where the sitting room will be, you're thinking about where you're going to be having your coffee. In the future, you're supposed to be thinking about where you're going to put your office. So that you're not very far from where you're staying. So that one means that, you know, the way that we've been offering that traditional education is also going to change. Yeah. So for us as a profession, what we've said, we've had some wonderful programs with the Ministry of Finance. We are now moving on with Chansen, and we are also looking forward to these great ideas that are being put forward by people like Natalie around the bonds. We're going to be participating. Then we're also going to be talking to the fund managers. Yeah. We try to rally support from the industry and tell them, guys, you know, time for crying is over. It is over. You need to be part of the solution. Part of the solution.
But I want to disagree slightly. The future is not just in houses, in offices, in houses, in offices, in houses. The future is, you know, there's agribusiness, there is energy, there is art, and I want to make sure that we are not just stuck in this idea of, like, you know, work from home. No, we really need young people in all these sectors, and so he's speaking as an accountant, of course, but I want to make sure that the message here is, you know, get ready to become a CPA.
I like that, but also remember we're talking about accountability.
We have no control over bonds. I cannot accept that responsibility.
No, I'll do it. I'll take the responsibility of following up. But let's read some feedback that we have here. Mushambo Robert is actually saying, how will even private education financing be achieved if even the education sector in Rwanda is not stable? I don't know where he bases the stability on, but I think he's worried, he's not optimistic about private education financing. What would you tell this person who's not optimistic about the private education financing from your own experience?
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying that the education sector itself
is unstable.
I mean, unstable is the wrong word. Keeps changing, but I think that we're working on that. I think it's things have progressed a lot better than what people are seeing, and I think the next few years we're going to see a lot of accelerated progress.
Then Duhire Jean is saying, my plea goes to institutions that earn a lot. Let more loans be offered so long as paying back happen. So if you got the job and you're earning more, you can get more financing to be able to continue advancing your education in that sense. I think he also comes back and he says, the other thing is how can such models of financing be explained to those in need, because information to such is hard to get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So currently, we advertise through our partners and with our partners, and we are barely meeting. The demand is very, very high. We will increase our awareness and our campaigns.
Yeah.
This is why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
And I understand. We work with secondary schools and with local districts to spread the word.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Eugene, we also we normally do things like road shows, for example. So,
Yes.
we'll be very glad to partner with you guys. We go along together
Yes.
as a team, and we can be able to showcase the kind of opportunities that are there.
I like that. I like that. So in closing, maybe where do we go from here? I know we've made some commitments in terms of committing to avail the information and also demystifying the misconceptions. Where do we go from here? If there's anything we need to remember from this conversation tonight, what is it that you want people to remember from this conversation tonight? Amin, I'll start with you.
One of the things is that, if Rwanda is going to achieve that Vision 2050, education must be put at the center of that strategy.
Yeah.
For me, that's my...
Yeah. Education must be at the center. Natalie?
I think education is a critical challenge. Skills is a critical challenge, and we have an opportunity. Many people have complained that education has not been a priority in this country, and we've seen many challenges. But I think it's time for us to take ownership and accountability together. I mean, we are not the only partner that works with Chanson. There are many TVETs that are coming in, provide shorter training, and I think there's an opportunity for us to have a bigger conversation as a country on how we do this. I would say that, as she mentioned, the Ministry of Education has been doing a lot of initiatives around this, but we need to have more substantive thinking together and action, whether it's these partnerships with the private sector, associations that are working in this area, private financing, and then education institutions, whether we provide degrees or shorter trainings that actually lead to employment, that focus has to be critical. I think everyone has the will. Now we just need to get to action.
Yeah.
And part of that is, doing what we can control. Like as an educational organization, we are focused. We are literally driven. The numbers that pop up in my office at the end of the week, I'm looking at how many are employed. How many are enrolled are great, but how many are at the end of the day getting a job? Because in Rwanda, we have to be careful that we understand the reality of most young people in Rwanda, and giving them some sort of training that allows them to improve their lives and to earn an income is not just for them but their families.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to really be thinking about. And we are up here in a lot of the policies, but we also have to come down and say, how do we create the type of pathways and fund these pathways that lead to employment for young people?
Right. Very powerful indeed. And I'll read this one here that came quite earlier from Lydia Ingawire, who says 2 key points so far. Career guidance is crucial. And the second is that financial literacy is a master skill. And this needs to start early. And thanks for the great conversation. I like that. I have another one here from Vince, who actually is saying, thanks, Eugene. What will they tell those who think that Chanson is a scam? I think we've covered that in that particular sense. And then Abdul Karim Habimana says education financing products aren't something attractive to financial institutions as they encourage parents to save for their kids. Other than non-privileged youth still struggling to get financing opportunities, and philanthropy can be a new way to private sector that can help. I think Natalie did also mention that that is also scaling down in a way. A lot of people are not really even putting that money in there. But I want to hear your thoughts, first of all, maybe on the aspect of change of policy, because it's a life thing. It's alive. It changes. There's adjustments. What's your strategy in that area in terms of these changes that, we spoke about the changes in the education sector, the stability aspect. What would you say in terms of strategy in maintaining
is world class, and it's very well structured to get people to essentially earning. What we need to work on, and this is with the central bank, this is also with the Ministry of Education, with Minikofin, is to have policy similar to what BRD has for private lending to happen, so that employers feel comfortable to deduct from payroll and just pay us directly. Take away that pain for young people from making repayments, just deduct directly. This is the kind of policy we need to start looking at. And the other thing I just want to emphasize, and we've touched on this a little bit, but the role of employers and of the private sector is critical. And it starts as simple as making sure that young people are paid properly, right? There was a bit of a trend after COVID that people were staying in internships for months and months and months because employers were taking advantage of COVID. Pay young people properly. They've gotten the training. They've worked hard to get here. Pay them properly, because what you're paying them will be investing in your pipeline of next talent, right? So I just wanted to emphasize something we haven't emphasized enough. But if you're an employer and you're watching this, it's really, really important that you see your role in this. It's not just hiring people, but hiring them well and supporting them in their career growth.
Because someone invested in that effort. And all that. Thank you so much for making time and for this conversation. I always say it's the shortest 1 hour, but the conversation is not meant to end on these four walls. It's just starting, so that we can be able to spark more conversations and see how we can be able to find solutions to all this. I want to say thank you for making time. Okay. All right. And also for our viewers who've been watching us from whichever part of the world, thank you for allowing us into your living rooms, into the spaces that you've been watching this very conversation from. Keep talking. Keep asking your questions. Of course, the panelists here are very active on social media platforms. If you have a question that we've not handled, or a comment or question you want to follow up on, feel free to reach out, and always add the hashtag #TheSummitRW. We'll see you again next time for another conversation. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye. Thank you.
Welcome.
Is that right?